Hello, I'm Jaye and this is Jayesixx, the home of all things cosplay from tips and tutorials to convlogs and everything in between. Today we're going to be tackling the next part in our body paint series, which is adding contour to your body paint. Now if you're not already, please consider hitting that subscribe button, it really helps me out, and maybe let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next. Now without further ado, let's just head into the video. First, we'll need our base to work off. If you haven't already, please check out the last video where I showed two methods to apply body paint as a base. This time I used a sponge to apply mine. So today I'm going to be showing you two methods of applying contour to your body paints. The first method is going to be using more body paint itself, and the other method is going to be using eyeshadow. Now, we're going to be starting with our body paint method here. The best way I can kind of describe it in terms of everyday makeup usage is that you're going to be using your paint as it's more akin to using cream contour and a beauty blender, whereas when you're trying to use eyeshadow, that's a bit kind of more like a powder contour with like an angled brush. So starting with our body paint here, we're just going to be layering up some darker shades based on whatever colour it is that you've used for your base. We're going to be applying in a sort of backwards 3. That's going to be hitting the contours of your temples, your cheekbones, and underneath your jaw as well. Something I've noticed when using more paint as my contour rather than using eyeshadow and a brush is that it can leave the skin looking a bit more wet. This is simply just because we're adding more wet products on top of wet products. And it can be rectified, we will powder over the top of this anyway to make sure that our paint is locked in and sealed. But it can just be something to bear in mind, especially if you're feeling unhappy with the look of your skin to begin with. It may just be a bit wet and may just need a second to dry. For your highlights, you're just going to be using a paler shade than the paint you've used as your base. You're going to want to apply it where the light naturally hits your face, your forehead, the tops of your cheekbones, the chin, and the tip of your nose. You may want to use a smaller sponge or a brush to reach those harder to reach areas. I don't necessarily recommend using a beauty blender, though that might be the thing that we naturally reach for. I've found with beauty blenders that they actually pull more paint off the skin than they do apply. This is just with the nature of how the sponge is made, as opposed to the more open porous sponge that we use to apply. The beauty blender is a bit more compact and it just sucks in a lot more moisture. Don't mind me, just fighting to get my paint to dry before I added more layers. Here I'm going to put a tiny little bit of white onto a clean part of my sponge and just use it to pick out some really small areas of highlight. So the tip of my nose, the bridge of my nose, top of my cheekbones, and my chin as well. This is just going to add a little bit more contrast to the highlights and shades of our face. For our eyeshadow contour, use any large angled contour brush that you may have, though please bear in mind that it could end up stained or you may have to wash it a lot more frequently than you would your everyday makeup brush. I have a brush that's specifically used for Molly because I wear him that frequently that he has just gained his own brush. Like with the paint, you're going to want to pick some eyeshadow shades that are a darker shade than the one you've used. With the red, I'm using this purpley burgundy, and I find that adding a little bit of purple into your contour adds that bit more depth to the shades. This can apply with your paint too. And just like your body paint method, you're going to want to contour using this 3 method, hitting the temples, the cheekbones, and underneath your jaw as well. Personally more of a fan of the eyeshadow method, just because in my everyday makeup usage, I do tend to reach for a powder contour rather than a cream contour. I find I have a little bit more control over it, but please just do whatever works best for you and the methods that you naturally are more drawn to. Another thing I've noticed about using powder eyeshadow to do my contouring is that it kind of does the job of the powder for you. This means we don't have to powder as much at the end because the eyeshadow is naturally setting the paint. Please bear in mind though, if you do have naturally dry skin, this might not be the method for you, as it could potentially dry your skin out more. Just be careful, listen to your skin. It may be that you need to look at more of a paint method with a setting spray as opposed to a powder method and more powder on top. Now with your lipstick, you're obviously going to find it a lot easier to just buy a lipstick in that shade. You know, I would highly recommend, if you can and you have the funds, please just look for a lipstick that's in the right shade for your paint. But if that's not the case and you cannot find lipstick in the right shade, you can mix up a body paint to use as a replacement. But some things to keep in mind is that a body paint is not long lasting the same way that lipstick is. Because this is water activated paints, it will rub off and it will disappear from around your lips just with it being naturally wet, and it's a little bit harder for you to reapply on a con day, especially because it's just a little bit harder to carry body paint around with you. But it works in a pinch, and it really works for shoot days or areas where you can quickly touch up and reapply. Now, eyebrows are exactly the same, as it entirely depends on whether you're more of a cream eyebrow person or a powder eyebrow person. Unless you're looking for a colour that really cannot be found, or it needs to be specifically very pigmented, i.e. white, I would personally just stick with whatever you commonly use for your brows. For me, that's a pressed powder brow in a dark brown, but body paint does also work too, especially if you're wanting something a bit more dramatic. I'm going to quickly add some eyeshadow, eyeliner and mascara to both sides, and then we can take a look at the finished look. So let's look at the comparisons. There are very slight colour variations on either side. These are just due to the colours I had available and the variations between those shades. So we're going to be looking at finish as opposed to colour difference. The body paint side is still looking a little bit more dewy compared to the powder of the eyeshadow. This can be fixed, like I mentioned a bit earlier, with more powdering. Alternatively, like I mentioned, there are setting sprays out there that are for body paints. Just make sure you test it beforehand. We wouldn't want our paint running on a con day. I was able to get a little bit more depth in the paint than I was with the eyeshadow due to the paint being a bit more pigmented. I could add more eyeshadow shades to achieve the same look, but it would include more layering and a bit more trial and error to achieve the look that I wanted. Like I've mentioned, I do prefer the eyeshadow method. I find it a little bit easier for me, but that isn't me necessarily saying that it's better. I hope you find that this video helps. Like I've said throughout the video, you take this however is more comfortable for you. I am just helping to show you the difference in different methods, but equally, there are more ways to do it, you know? If you would like to see me try the paint side with a brush rather than a sponge, just leave a comment down below and I will make it ASAP, whether it be as a short or like another short little YouTube video. I will make it happen. Make sure you're subscribed and leave a like down there. It helps me out a lot and I really appreciate it. But that's it for now. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys!